Alright, so in today's video, we're going to talk about Cenk and his appearance at Turning Point USA and just the crazy amount of backlash that he has received. But kudos to Cenk, I gotta give it to him. He's actually been given a lot of interviews from a lot of leftist progressive individuals in answering the toughest questions I think we're all asking. So let's have that conversation. Alright, so when I last did my video talking about Cenk going to Turning Point USA in their crazy event and speaking to someone like a Charlie Kirk, which is, I am not ashamed to say that an individual like that is racist. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Like, he has the receipts himself, and thank God he recorded himself. You can go check that out yourself. But after that, I didn't think it was going to be much more than that, but little to my expectations. He actually had the interviews with a lot of leftist progressive people, such as Brian Taylor Colin, Breaking Point, I believe, Marc Lamont Hill, which we're about to cover, and Francesca, which we're going to get into here. And like I said at the beginning of this, it's probably easier for someone like Cenk to dodge these interviews. It's probably best for him to just go on his own TV show and just kind of answer critics that way. But it takes a little bit of courage, you know, and that to me gives me a little bit more leeway into what he's doing, because he doesn't have to talk to the Marc Lamont Hills. He doesn't have to. You know, so if someone is really trying to grift, they're gonna stay out of the limelight that's going to expose them, at least in my opinion. So let's go ahead and get into this first one here. And I'm not really too caught up on Francesca. I know she was on Sam Cedar's podcast a few times, so that's the only way I really know of her. I just subscribed to her like a week ago, and her questions and just her raw emotion is what I love, because she's not holding nothing back. And that's the type of conversations I want people to start having. And this right here, to me, is beautiful. So let's take a listen.
I'm 100% right about that. So let's discuss.
Yeah, let's discuss. You had your say there, and you've been saying various degrees of that same thing. And I gotta say, like, I watched this whole, I watched the whole clip, and it started off, and I was like, this is pretty good. This is good. Like, pretty good interview. I like that you're sitting down. It wasn't bad. This moment, like, truly a part of me died when I watched this.
Wow, I can't believe that.
Yeah. Oh, super. Just like shriveled up and died, floated away into the ocean.
Damn.
Here's what happens. A couple things. He asks you about left-wing media and why there isn't more left-wing media. Which already, as you are there, in the sort of kingdom of turning points, is like, that's such a dig. Like, why are you guys so weak is effectively what he's saying. And instead of pointing out the way that TPUSA has been bankrolled by Republican mega donors out of Chicago and many other places for years now, and talking about how the Daily Wire was funded by the fracking brothers, the Wilkes brothers. Now they're fishing for new, investors, whatnot, but that there is so much money on the right. He handed this answer to you on a fucking platter, and all you said was, you know what? You guys are really good at being welcoming. People just like you. Cenk, they've got all the money.
I didn't say people just
what
like
are you
me.
talking about? That's effectively you're good at coalescing. And here's my question to you about so that's just number one on the media, because that just stings because I'm in media. But on the 5%, if you disagree with MAGA 5%, they still welcome you. How did that work out for Liz Cheney?
So her first point there, and that's what I highlighted in my video. And, it feels good to know that other individuals notice that too. You know what I'm saying? Because it feels like I'm not crazy. But like she said, like, that was a perfect time to not only point out the CNNs and the MSNBCs, Fox News. Like, they are part of that propaganda machine, and he didn't point that out. And when Charlie, you know, essentially said like she said, like, left-wing media can't compete with right-wing media, as if we're missing something, or as if we just don't have grounds to speak on. And that's not the case. They are getting funded millions of dollars from millionaires and billionaires and institutions that are pumping this information to these YouTubers and these other organizations. So that's what's missing. Not because they have some crazy, you know, intellectual skills that we're just lacking. That is not it. And he didn't say that. He didn't point that out, and whatever his reasoning is, he didn't want to hurt their feelings at that moment. At the end of this, that's part of the reason why individuals who are not prepared to have these conversations should not be in those spaces trying to do what Cenk is trying to do. And when you drop the ball like that, we're going to point that out. And that seems a little suspicious, you know? So let's continue.
Yeah. So look, is there a part of MAGA that'll push you out? Of course. That's what we know MAGA for.
When do they push you out, Cenk? When do they push you out?
Largely when you disagree with Trump.
Exactly.
So listen,
this is the thing that it's the unspoken thing that you're never saying, that ultimately it's all hunky-dory. Elon can tweet back at you. Vivek can listen to you. But if you defy Donald Trump, the God Emperor, you're kicked out of the castle. And no one's defending Liz Cheney. Screw both their castle and the other castle. But Liz Cheney voted with Donald Trump 98% of the time. And just the 1% when she was like, hey, you know what? You can't do a coup on this country. And Adam Kissinger, and they were gone. So miss me with this 5% BS, yo.
So, all right, Franny, a whole bunch of things here. So, number one, you're right. That's definitely how Turning Point started. Daily Wire certainly started that way. I don't know what their current funding is, but they seem to have a lot more funding than any of us do. So you're right, and I have said that in the past, and I probably should have put that in there in that particular appearance, and I will mention that, and that'll really grate on their nerves. But I've got no problems telling their audience, and I tell them all the time, no, you guys have way more money, and they're always shocked by that.
Okay, so that's that part right there. I'm really glad that he fessed up in where he fumbled the ball right there. He could have made some excuses, which he has plenty of times. I don't watch 3 interviews of almost 2 hours each, and he's pretty good at coming up with excuses. But I'm glad right there, at least he was like, you know what? I didn't say that. They probably do need to hear that, because most of them probably don't even understand or even know that. And next time I will. That is what I like. I say, hey, if you screwed up anywhere, admit that you screwed up. Don't try to come up with these excuses from A to Z on why you didn't say this or why you should have said that. Like, if you did it and you know that's a key point to what separates the left and the right, then you need to tell their audience that. Stop trying to hold their hands and have these beers. They need to know key truths on why, at least in our opinion, on why they're so far gone. In the media that they intake is part of the problem. And they're getting and these individuals are getting paid millions of dollars to push out propaganda. That's what they need to hear. But, you know.
And I'm like, because they're swimming in money and don't realize how much we're starving out here on the left, right? Sure. So, and I talked on Tim Pool's show about that, et cetera. Now, when it comes to the 5%, 95%, yeah, I hear you. So it's when you disagree with Trump, especially in the past, especially in the first term, et cetera, you're a goner, right? But they are pushing back even on Trump now. So, again, on things that we don't agree with, but on COVID, for example, they thought that Trump did too much COVID protections, et cetera. And there was, and this is really encouraging. When I talk about Team Miriam, Marco Rubio, Elise Stefanik, Mike Huckabee, and Mike Waltz. So those are the 4 that were put in by the neocons put in by Miriam Adelson. In the old days, what I would have gotten, Franny, is, no way, they're the greatest. They're not neocons. You're a liar. Trump picked them. Trump's the best. Now what I'm getting from the right-wing host, which is amazing, and let alone the base, they're all saying, yeah, I hear you. We got concerns about them. We got concerns. Okay. So that's the thing I never heard before. So that is a change. Now, in terms of the concept that
once again, I don't know what she's going to say. I just watched this once and it's 2 hours long. So trust me. That's fine that if the base or the voters are starting to have, their concerns about the establishment in regards to the Republican Party. But we have to understand, just because they're starting to have questions doesn't mean that they're paying attention to what's happening now. If you look at the pick of Trump's cabinet, 9, 10, 12 of them are millionaires, and like 4 of them are billionaires along with Elon Musk. Like, if that doesn't scream establishment, what does? You know what I'm saying? So like, you can have your questions about the Mitch McConnells and the Cheneys. Okay, that's easy. That's easy picking. But what about the people now? You know what I'm saying? Like, this is like the millionaire billionaire club at this point. And if you think they're going to have your best interests, you're mistaken. They didn't become millionaires on accident because they have great ideas. No, at some point throughout their journey, they exploited people one way or another. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Okay? Like, that's how the system works. And you have to work the system to get to that point. You know what I'm saying? So I just wish I was there, honestly.
I'm referring to the 5%, 95%. But Franny, we're in the middle of that right now. This is the perfect example. So I started the largest progressive network. I've given dozens of progressives opportunities they didn't have before. I started Just Democrats, et cetera, et cetera. The minute I disagree, like 5% on trans issues or crime, everybody's like, right wing, fascist, right wing. Almost every show is saying that. Almost every show. So you telling me that you don't push people out? You're pushing out the movement overall. At least the online left movement seems to be trying to push out the one network that has helped progressives more than any other network, and it's not in dispute. But my God, we have 5% disagreement. So tear it down. This is the destructive extreme left that I honestly, that portion. That kind of destructive attitude is poison. It's not just poison to us, it's poison to our chances of winning. Because we keep pushing people out, and then all of a sudden we lost all the swing states and we lost the popular vote. I'm trying to get our side to wake up, snap out of our hypnosis of we hate, and we hate the right wing, and they're all white supremacists, and they're all racist, and they're all sexist, and we hate, and we never go in the room with them, we hate. What the hell happened to us? And no one's allowed to disagree. We're now authoritarian. No.
Wait,
So I do understand his premise. I do understand his argument there. And that's one thing that we just me being on YouTube for a year and some change, I've even noticed that is that if I don't align 100% with someone who commented, then I am not on their, I am not their ally. You know what I'm saying? Like, I had to argue with these people. It's like you're nitpicking one thing I said, and all of a sudden I don't know what I'm talking about. I am not progressive. We are not on the same team here. We need to look beyond that and understand our main goal here. And if we can't do that, then we're screwing ourselves over. I done said that plenty of times, especially the past 4 months when Harris was running. People want to talk about, oh, she didn't support reparations. Like, hey, okay, cool. Trump is not supporting reparations. He doesn't eat. Well, he's supporting reparations for victims of DEI. You know what I'm saying? But like, in the grand scheme of things, that is not a justified reason to not vote for her, especially what's at stake here, or was at stake. So those kind of things right there is what holds a lot of people back on the left side from uniting for a bigger purpose. We all want people to align with us 100%. And if you don't, hey, guess what? We're not allies. And that's the kind of BS that I've noticed. And I've only been on YouTube for a year. You know what I'm saying? So
can I just clarify?
I will never allow the left to be authoritarian and And this idea of just hating the other side is poison.
You know what's so funny about you calling the left authoritarian is that you think the left has power. Like, I love that you think
total nonsense.
We are on the precipice of real authoritarianism and real fascism, and you believe that the online left are the authoritarians. I mean, I don't know how to tell you. You sound like Bill Maher and Nancy Pelosi had a kid, and it came out Cenk Uygur. And let me just ask you though. Let me just ask you. So what shows on the left do you like that aren't on the TYT network?
Yeah, so I said, look, there's a lot of good popular shows on the left that I like, and it's because there are. So Breaking Point's a good show. Kyle Kalinski's Secular Talk is a good show. He was against me going on Maga. I haven't seen his video, but Kyle's been against us a couple of times. But I largely didn't hold a grudge on that.
But wait, let me just stop you. First of all, you had a great conversation with Crystal Ball. I think she made some really good points to you on, I think it was on Breaking Points. Kyle has, I think, been very disturbed, especially by your appearance with Charlie Kirk. But what you just said there, they've been against us. I really want to just dig into this idea that, because you're a fighter, man. That's cool. That's great. But like, you really do have a very I almost want to call it Bush-like, Cheney-like, you're with us or against us attitude.
100% wrong.
Like you just literally, I love that you're proving my point. But when I say this, you truly, you sound like people are either against you, but if they criticize you, they are not. And yet, here you are, Cenk, telling the entire right wing that all you want to do is break bread with them, that you want to debate with them, but afterward you want to go have a beer.
Yes, I do.
You want to have a beer with people who want to put people in mass deportation camps. They want to deport.
Okay, so before they get into the crazy stuff they're about to get into, I don't, and especially the past couple of weeks, I've been seeing more of Cenk than I've normally have. I don't get the vibes of, if you don't understand what I'm doing, then you're against me. I haven't noticed that, so I don't, maybe, she knows a little bit more than I do, but I haven't been seeing that. But what I have been seeing is, I am trying to do something that hasn't been done, or I don't see anyone doing, because we desperately need X, Y, and Z. That's what I'm hearing from him, is like, our strategy extremely failed this time, so I want to do something that's out of the box. That's what I'm hearing from him. So is that wrong? No. Can you ask questions and have your concerns? Absolutely. But to say that he's just, on his own island and saying, if you don't agree with me, then, screw you, like, I don't see that, to be honest with you. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know if she got that there, but
who want to put people in mass deportation camps? They want to deport.
You think we're going to get put in camps? You sound all right. Anyway,
you think I sound crazy? They're starting with Chinese people. That's my fucking family, dog. Like, what are you talking about?
That's such an excuse. Okay, they're going to start with Muslims. They're going to start with my people. Okay,
sure.
Stop hiding behind vulnerable communities.
I'm hiding behind vulnerable communities.
Yes, you are. You're using them as human shields.
I'm standing in front of vulnerable communities. Cenk, what are you doing? What are you doing?
I'm in front of vulnerable communities. I'm the most endangered, Franny.
By tweeting at Elon Musk? Please, don't help me. Come on, Cenk. This is so sad. That's so sad.
Let's break
Okay, so now when it comes to that part right there, it's entertaining, of course. So let's just get that out the way for Cenk to say, hey, stop hiding behind vulnerable communities, because there is people that do that. But this is the stuff, if we're going to critique one another in our strategies, in our plans to, do X, Y, and Z, this is what we need to stay away from. Not, I'm doing more than you. What are you doing? No, but I'm doing it. Like who at the end of the day, who cares? You know what I'm saying? We both lost. We all lost this past election. So I don't care what you think you're doing more than this person, or what you think you're doing more. That doesn't mean nothing if we're losing. You know what I'm saying? So when I first seen it, I laughed. I was like, hey, this is getting crazy. But then when I listened to this part again to put in this video, I was like, this is kind of sad. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you have to get into the insults and trying to, prove that you're better than the other person because you do X, Y, and Z, then that's when the conversation breaks down and you get nothing from that. So that's when I kind of got a little disappointed in that whole conversation. But then Marc Lamont Hill, I love Marc Lamont Hill when he speaks. 9 times out of 10, I'm taking notes. You know what I'm saying? Because what he has to say, at least in my opinion, is very valuable. And this conversation he had with Cenk, he didn't hold nothing back. Trust me. If you guys want to, please listen to this entire conversation. It's about 2 hours, and he doesn't hold nothing back. But at the end of it is what I really love his position on. And I think we all need to be in that same mindset when we're handling situations like Cenk or other individuals you might know that want to try to do something different. Don't hate on them, support them, have your questions, but still support them. So let's listen.
The world that way and what it means to be in the room with the people who look at the world that way. But if you're stipulating from the beginning that you don't necessarily agree that they're that thing, that's different. I'm not talking about how they self-identify. I'm not even talking about whether we point in the room and say, hey, white supremacist over there. Hey, sexist over there. Hey, transphobe over here. I'm not saying we got to do any of that. What I'm saying is that if we're walking into a room with people whose ideologies and beliefs are consistent with white supremacy, with Islamophobia, with anti-Semitism, etc., we have to at least question what the possibility is of reaching a political alliance if at the core they don't think we're humans. Mm-hmm. If at the core they don't think we deserve the same thing, regardless of what we call it. And so if we only focus on the tactic of how to engage a white supremacist, we lose sight of the fact that they're still white supremacists and that they don't want the same things we want, regardless of what they say.
Mm-hmm. Now, Marc, this is a core disagreement. So if there's a room full of Islamophobes, I'm not going to, A, not go in there, and B, I'm not going to call them Islamophobes. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to start to change minds very gradually, okay? And so I think that's a way better strategy. And yes, it endangers me maybe to go into a room filled with Islamophobes, but I'm going to do it again and again and again, okay? And so it, like, even you saying, okay, half the room is white supremacists, but Marc, so you're saying they believe in systemic, like they are part of a system that executes racism in the country. Yes, but we all kind of are. But so calling all Americans white supremacists is not helpful.
But again, you're
so and once again, like I said, earlier, he'll come up with these weird excuses instead of like, you know what? You're right. You know what I'm saying? Or like, maybe I need to switch this up a little bit. If you're walking into a room of white supremacists and they're all white supremacists, like you literally walk into a KKK meeting, okay? Do not be ashamed to say, hey, I don't feel like I need to unify or ally with these individuals. That's completely different from, hey, I'm walking into a room full of Republicans. That's different because you don't know them on an individual basis. So you need to have those conversations. Start off with, hey, what's your name? What's your favorite sport? Something like that, and then try to get to know them. I get that part. But if you're walking into a room full of white supremacists, individuals, why? Why do you feel like you need to talk to them to change their mind, to support a system that's literally opposing what they're used to? And 9 times out of 10, you might get that one that's like, you know what? I seen the light. You know what I'm saying? I seen a story, where this black guy was, trying to befriend a literal KKK member, and he did it. And I think he did it a few times. But that's that one person. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't feel a need to have the allyship with an individual that is purposely working in the system that's against me just because of the color of my skin. Why do I need to befriend him? Why do I need to talk to him and understand, you know, his perspective and his point of view? Like, no. Use that energy for someone who is in the middle or who doesn't know their involvement in that system. Not someone who purposely knows their involvement in that system. Those are two different people in two different relationships you need to be having.
You're holding on to a point that I'm not making. You keep debating the argument about whether or not we should call them white supremacists. Let me stipulate again. I'm not making the case about whether or not we should call them white supremacists. We don't have to engage that part.
You're calling them internally white supremacists and saying, why are you going into a room with white supremacists?
That's the second straw man. My debate isn't whether or not we go in the room. It's how we go in the room, what rooms we go in, and what we do and what we say about the people in that room when we're in the room.
Okay, great. Let's have that conversation.
Right. So you went on stage with Charlie Kirk, for example, who, just to use your description of him, says, you know, not white. We're not going to use the white supremacist language, because for the purpose of this conversation, it's not that helpful. But certainly he consistently advocates positions that certainly strengthen white supremacy. He certainly advocates positions that strengthen anti-Black racism. He certainly advocates positions that advance Islamophobia, that push against women's reproductive rights, just based on the things that he has said and done. Would you agree with everything I just said?
Largely.
Okay. So you're on a stage with someone like that.
Yeah.
Can you see at least how you being on a stage like that could make someone who trusts you because of all the great work you've done believe that he's not so bad? And maybe the positions he's taking are legitimate ones. Could you at least see how being in the room with him without offering any substantive critique of him in that space could be problematic?
But wait a minute, I defended left-wing positions, so I don't accept your premise.
I said a substantive critique of his behavior, what he's doing. I didn't say you didn't have a critique of your right.
I disagreed with him on trans housing. So again, I don't accept the premise. But
okay, so let me restate it because I don't want to operate disingenuously. Can you see how it could be problematic to someone? Or let me say it differently. Could you see the problem? Can you see any potential problems in standing on a stage with someone who has such positions that are so antithetical, not just to yours, but to the interests of the most vulnerable people in this country? Could you see how you might actually legitimize him in a way that's dangerous to our side, not to the country, but to the people who are confused, to the people in the middle, to the people who are still trying to figure it out, or to the people on the left who are vulnerable, who are susceptible to a switch?
Yeah. So there's two parts to that question. So on the one part, can I see it? Yes, I can see why people think that. And I'll end on top of it, Mark, that not only are they worried, hey, is this legitimizing him? You're in the room with a person like this, etc. But we've also seen a pattern, right? We've seen Dave Rubin and we've seen Tulsi Gabbard and we've seen others. And first they go in the room, then they agree with a little bit, and then they agree with everything. And then all of a sudden they're all right-wingers. And then while still pretending to be left-wing and saying, oh, well, me as a liberal or a progressive or a left-winger is telling you you're right about all the issues, right? And so I get that's why people are concerned. So that's not crazy. I get it, right? But then the second half of what you're saying, I don't agree with at all, right? So does that legitimize? Well, first of all, they won the election. So they won the popular vote. They won all the swing states. Like, we have it in our mind that I specifically said not to the entire country, but to the people on our side, specifically in anticipation of you saying they're already legitimate and won the popular election. Again, I'm not saying that you're. Am I legitimizing them to our side?
What I'm saying is there are people who are going to vote for them, right? There are people, majority of whom are in this country are going to vote for, say, Donald Trump, right? But if you stand on stage with Donald Trump, that strengthens Donald Trump's position. It doesn't undermine it.
No, it totally depends. So, for example,
so to add in here, and I've had a couple people ask me in my comment section, when I would talk about Stephen A. Smith, one commenter said, like, you talking about him on your platform is only helping him. You know what I'm saying? And I guess to a marginal degree, like, if someone is watching my channel and doesn't know who Stephen A. Smith is, and they go to his channel and they listen to what he says and say, hey, I like this guy, let me subscribe, that's a little weird. you know, but Stephen A. Smith is on his way to 1 million subscribers on his personal podcast channel, let alone his, you know, $1 million deal that he got with ESPN. Like, he's well known. He has like what, 2 books out, you know what I'm saying, on just about every sports news network. Like, he's already legitimate. He's not getting no help from me from a 30,000 subscriber YouTube channel. You know what I'm saying? So like, once again, like Charlie Kirk, I get what Marc is trying to say, but Charlie Kirk is already legitimized to his base, and people who are against him, they know who Charlie Kirk is. So if anyone's listening to Cenk and doesn't know who Charlie Kirk is, and they get a taste of who he is, I don't think they're gonna be like, hey, I think Charlie Kirk is such a not a bad guy because he stood on stage with Cenk. No, I don't think it's that easy. But yeah, I do understand that it could be some idiots that fall in between the crack. I guess. Let's go to the next section here. Like I said, guys, if you guys want to watch this entire thing, go for it.
We all, the left and the right, we all hate establishment media. Right? We can agree that establishment media needs to go. Everybody claps. That's a great feel-good moment. But again, those people who leave that room, who are the dominant consumers of mainstream media, who are the dominant viewers of mainstream media, and who are controlled by people who are right-wing, they're going to walk away saying, yeah, we got to tear down mainstream media. And they're talking about CNN, and they're talking about MSNBC. Courageous is going on that stage and saying, look, I know y'all don't want to hear this, but Fox News is mainstream media too.
But I have said that on right-wing shows. So you're taking a 20-minute event here.
I'm not saying you've never said it. I'm saying in that we're talking about how to behave in this space, right? I'm sure you've said it 1,000,000 times, but we're talking about right now how to behave in that space. And when I keep pointing out what you didn't do in that space, you kind of do the sleight of hand thing where then you talk about what you did somewhere else. I'm saying in this space, to answer your specific question you asked me, which is, should you have torn them down and brought up specific acts of racism or this other thing? I'm saying you don't necessarily have to do that or even make it so personal, right? Because I get how that could be a distraction. What you can do is say, hey, we all want to tear down mainstream media, establishment media. I'm with y'all. But let's be clear. Establishment media isn't just MSNBC and CNN. It's also Fox, which has been the voice of the right for decades now. It's OANN. It's all these things. All of this needs to be torn down. Yes, you could say that.
So, and that was one of my biggest, like, what in the hell are you doing moments? Like when I watched him on that stage and he talked about, you know, the establishment and media, it's like, you're not going to point out, like, you literally have Charlie Kirk, who has probably way more views than me, Marc, and Cenk put together. It's like, hey, Fox News is the biggest media outlet in America. And even after the elections, Fox News, their numbers increased by a large portion. So if anyone needs to take down corporate media, Fox News needs to be the first. Not CNN, sure, MSNBC, who still watches them, I don't know. But like, you need to go into these areas, into these events, and you need to make sure you have what you need to say and say it. And you know, at the end of this video, that's going to be part of my wrap up, is you need to make sure you know what you need to say. Because if for whatever reason, when you're having a conversation about, you know, dismantling big corporate media, and for whatever reason you forget or you don't say Fox News, something's wrong. It's going to feel like you did that on purpose because you didn't want to ruffle their feathers. But you can point out the CNNs, the MSNBC. You can do that. That's easy money. That's low-hanging fruit. You need to say something about Fox News, because if you don't, then nothing else matters at that point. You know what I'm saying? So, Cenk, no excuses. Just say, hey, you did it, and next time you will. That's it.
So, Marc, when I'm on a show like Patrick Bet David in the last 2 hours or 3 hours, we get into that stuff, and that's exactly what I say. Exactly what I say. Okay? So you're taking a 20-minute speech and go, not good enough. You didn't say it there. You didn't say it that one time. Okay? No, that's
not what I'm doing. You're misrepresenting my position. My position isn't that in this single instance you didn't do this one thing in a 20-minute space. My critique is that when you're deploying now a strategy of entering these kinds of rooms and doing these kinds of things, and particularly these very public spectacles, right? Which is what conventions are: Democrat, Republican, left, right, whatever. They're all these public spectacles. And I'm saying that there's a significant danger in entering those spaces and not being significantly courageous. This isn't about nitpicking a particular thing you didn't do. This isn't about saying, well, you did 99, but there's the 100 when you miss. You're framing this as if we're nitpicking. And I'm saying, no, the actual logic of the strategy that you're articulating right now about how to move in these rooms, I'm saying is deeply problematic for left wing.
I don't even understand what you're saying.
Which, Cenk, hey, you understand what he's saying. Like when you go into the big events, you know what I'm saying? Like this is, I don't want to say the Super Bowl, but this is the playoffs of the event that you went to. This is where all the Republicans are watching. Donald Trump was there. You know what I'm saying? Like this wasn't some podcast of like Tim Pool or something. Donald Trump himself and his Goonies were there, and you failed to mention Fox News. At that point, I don't care what you said on some other podcast. The place that you attended is getting millions of eyeballs. The ones you want to speak to, they're watching that event. And you failed to do one of the key things, key talking points you failed to do. You went to the Super Bowl and like Tony Romo, you fumbled at the 1 yard line. And now you trying to make excuses like, well, my other, games this season, I didn't fumble. So like, no, what counts is when you fumbled now. This was your moment and you failed in that particular conversation, at least in my eyes. It's like you missed a layup and now you're trying to come up with excuses on, what you did past season. It doesn't matter. You missed the layup in this most important game. And that's all that matters.
More powerful. I'll give you an example. Let's just hear what I'm saying.
But I do that at almost every opportunity.
And that's what we're going. What I'm saying though is every opportunity isn't the same. For example, if this were 300 years ago, just hypothetical, 200 years ago, and then I'll leave it alone. And we were in a place where black people weren't considered human beings, right? And black people legally were not citizens, right? And you were an abolitionist, and you walked in the room to a room of slaveholders, and said, every citizen should get a house. Every citizen should have the right to vote. Every person should be safe in this country. We should all agree on that. And y'all clap and walk out and hug it out and leave, right? You could say, look at this. I just brought together the abolitionist and the slaveholder. The problem is they're agreeing that all people should be safe and all citizens should vote, but they don't believe that black people are citizens or humans. Mm-hmm. So they think they're agreeing with you because they don't accept that stipulation, right? Well, and what I'm saying, and just let me finish the thought. And so what I'm saying is, when you have that exchange with them, you have a duty to confront them on that misconception. And you can't say, well, I've said it in Bible study, I've said it on the streets, I've said it in the underground railroad. No, when we're having that conversation, we have to say that thing. And then if I confront you on that, you can't say, well, Mark, I can't confront all their philosophical and epistemological. No, I'm not asking you to do that. I'm saying on this issue that you brought up, you have a duty to show them how they're wrong, because that's what's high stakes. That's what decides who lives or dies. Mm-hmm. That's what makes the political conversion. Otherwise, and this is the last piece of it, 5 seconds. Otherwise, the slaveholder walks away saying, look, me and the abolitionists agree. Let's go back to business as usual. They actually feel strengthened in their position. Mm-hmm. Now, please don't say, Mark, why are you comparing this to slavery? Please don't get on. No. Actually hear the heart and the substance of my argument and be intellectually honest and address. Don't talk around it. Address the specific example I gave you, and please answer.
Hey, what did I tell you? When Mark gets into his zone, he gets into his zone. You stay out of his way. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I don't remember Cenk's answer, so this is going to be fairly new to me still. So let's hear if he can stick to on subject and answer the question.
No, I get the analogy completely. I totally get it. So look, there's two parts to this. Number one, you just built a straw man. You said, oh, I did it in Bible study. I did it at a grocery store. No, I did it in right-wing spaces. I did it on some of the largest right-wing.
Yeah, that would be. That's not a straw man. To be clear, in 1800s, Bible study was a right-wing space. Only the right was allowed in the grocery store because black people were property. It's a perfect analogy. It's not a straw man. It's a perfect analogy.
You acknowledge I've done it in right-wing spaces, just not in that.
Just not the one that has us on the news right now. This is the big one.
But
this
was
the one to do it.
Going to make the news. Like half the time, I think it's going to make news, and it doesn't. I don't think half the time I don't think it's going to make any news.
Let's not get distracted. Please, I'll allow you to continue. I don't want to cut you off anymore. Please continue.
Okay, so then the second part of it is, Mark. In the problem with your analogy is that in the slaveholder, part of it, the fact that they hold slaves is so central to that conversation. So you can't possibly think like, oh, I just said all citizens should have an house, and I assume that they think that that means slaves, or I assume that they think that that doesn't mean slaves. Slavery is the central part of that conversation. Are they citizens or are they not citizens? Whereas now when we are talking about establishment, mainstream media, there's a lot of different variables there, and a lot of different things that people can mean. So whether we're talking about Fox or OAN within that conversation is not necessarily central in the same way that slavery is central in your analogy, right?
What's central in this conversation?
So what's central in this conversation is, do they actually believe some of these populist opinions, right? Do they actually dislike establishment politicians because they take donor money and hence are corrupt? And that's super central. And yes, my assessment is the MAGA voters, and yes, they're not seeing clear on Trump, they're not seeing clear on Elon Musk, but they do hate the corruption. And they do hate the donor class. Okay?
To that point, they clapped you when you said establishment media. They clapped when you said we hate Dick Cheney and Mitch McConnell. When you said we got to get rid of the donor class, no one clapped.
I noticed that. You know why, Mark? Because I challenged them by talking about their donors, and I've done that on many shows. And I've talked about, hey, remember Elon's a donor. Elon's a donor. I've talked about Miriam Adelson being a donor. When I get to Miriam Adelson, we go back to agreement. Okay, and you might not expect that from the right wing, who supported Israel throughout my entire life. But now when we talk about Israel with the right wing, half of them go, yeah, no, you're right. I don't know why we're – and they're not doing it out of the charity of their heart. They're not doing it because they love Muslim lives so much. They're doing it because they don't want – in their way of thinking, they don't want to waste money on there. Why are we giving it to Israel when we should be having it here at home? But I'll take it. But I never would have gotten there if I never talked to them.
All right. So once again, at least in my opinion, he dodged the question, because that's one of those moments where you say, you know what, I did fail right there. You know what I'm saying? Like I either you can say you forgot or you just didn't feel it like it was appropriate at that time. Whatever the case is, you are on the main stage, whether you think so or not. Like I said, Donald Trump spoke at that convention. You know it's a big deal. Okay, so you need to take that moment, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, and you say, and they never invite you again, then who cares? Screw it. But you need to make sure that you're doing your side, your people, your team, your allies, the best representation on that stage. And a lot of people they feel that you fumbled the ball at the 1 yard line. This was your mission to do this, and you didn't complete your mission by your own standards, So now you're switching it up, saying, oh, no, I used to do this. I did. Like, no, that doesn't work because you failed at this moment. So let's listen to Marc's conclusion. And like I said, I believe we all need to take this approach.
Israel, oh my God, that would be such a giant win in the midst of what appeared to be hopeless times. Now that's a hope against hope, okay? But can we win on any one of those things? Like, for example, like this is the easiest one, right? I say one of the things I say is pardon Edward Snowden, because I know that they want to pardon Edward Snowden, right? And we agree with pardoning Edward Snowden. And what that does is that doesn't change the world, but it takes a first step towards unity. And then let's see, well, do they really mean it on cutting the Pentagon? Because the voters mean it, or at least a big portion of them do. I know that the politicians don't mean it. So now that's an interesting collision. And what happens? Does the populist right wing rebel, or do they just simmer back down and go, yes, sir, absolutely, sir? I don't know. And I think that's super interesting. A lot of folks on the left say, no, they already know. They already know. Nobody on the right ever means anything. They're all robots or they're all evil or whatever that they think. That's just not true. They're human beings, and there's a giant range of that 77 million voters.
You know, when you came on the show, I thought the biggest thing we were going to end up disagreeing on was you being a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, which has been as deflating a movement in the last 3 weeks as anything happening politically. But it turned out we were going to have we had this spirited conversation, and just like you said, the Steelers are going to do better in the playoffs despite this losing streak. You know, you're also saying this plan is going to work despite the evidence to the contrary. You could be a prophet, not in the Islamic sense, but in the Western Christian sense of you could be absolutely right on both of these things. You could see the crystal ball better than the rest of us. I hope you're right. I hope it all works. I don't agree. And I do hope that if it doesn't, you come out and tell us that, you acknowledge that. I also hope that if you begin to take money from right-wing movements or organizations, because that you'll tell us that, because you've been straightforward with us. I've never known you to be dishonest. I believe you. I don't think you're grifting. I just think you're wrong. I think you're shamefully optimistic. And I think you have a faith in our open enemies that I think is unwarranted, unhealthy, and unhelpful. But I hope you're right and I'm wrong. I hope your optimism wins.
You know, that's the best I could hope for. And you just said something that I say on the show all the time. Look, I hope I'm wrong, right? I'll make these predictions like I think Trump's going to win. I'm super worried about it. And I hope I'm wrong, right? I think Kamala Harris's strategy is the wrong one. I hope I'm wrong, right? So time will tell. But Mark, for those who don't know, I've been through a lot of these tests already. So MSNBC, I turned down over $1 million to say the things that are right. They wanted me to be basically pro-establishment, and I wouldn't do it. They wanted me to, be soft on the inside. I mean, there's a moment where you are tested, and you're tested with a lot of money, prestige, status, all those things. And I said I'd rather tell the truth to my audience. So I'm not going to turn around after all this time and all the pain that we've gone through. I'm going to keep my eyes on the prize. And to me, if we don't pass progressive bills, then we didn't get anything done, right? Because then the rest of it is just ego games. Whoever has the status, etc. I don't give a damn about that. All I care about is passing bills, because that's the only thing that affects the actual voters' lives. So that's what I'm going to try to do.
Well, inshallah, it'll work out for you, my brother. Thank you.
All right. So, like Mark said, you cannot agree or you can disagree with someone and still not disrespect them by calling them a grifter. Mark knows him better than I do. So, I can have a little bit more or less of a personal opinion. Because all I can see is from the outside. I don't know what's going on the inside, but I can come to the conclusion and say, I truly believe that he's trying to do something new, trying to, venture off into uncharted territory and see what happens. And like Mark said, hey, if he can make something happen in somehow, some way, which I don't see Trump passing progressive policies, because we understand that the Republican voters are, 90% of their voters are struggling just like us. You know what I'm saying? So when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to high quality jobs, when it comes to the minimum wage, when it comes to education, these things that affect us affects them too. And if you was to ask them about healthcare and all these other things, 9 times out of 10, they're going to agree with you. The trick is, how can you convince them to vote their interests? That's the hard part. And if Cenk can make that happen somehow, some way, then hey, all power to you. But if it doesn't, then it doesn't. You know what I'm saying? And I want to leave with this quote here, because when I was listening to it, it reminded me of Frederick Douglass when he was at the 4th of July, I guess parade or convention, whatever was going on, in July 1852. And if you understand the time in that era, for Frederick Douglass to get on that stage and say what he said, in front of all these slave owners, in front of all these racist, bigoted people that are proud of it too. He had the balls enough to go on that stage and say what he had to say. And this is a portion of it. If you guys don't know it, please go look it up. You know what I'm saying? But the first portion of it is, what to the American slave is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him more than all other days in the year, the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is the consistent victim. And then yada, yada, yada. Go ahead, read. But that first portion right there, to me, if he would not have said that part, nothing else probably would have mattered. He would not be in the history books today. But he said that for a reason. And he wanted to get his point across. And I'm pretty sure, I don't know, tell me in the comments down below if I'm wrong, they didn't invite him to no other 4th of July parties after that. You know what I'm saying? But guys, if you agree or disagree with anything I said in this video, let me know in the comments down below, or hit that Discord button so me and you can have that one-on-one talk. And like always, let's have that conversation.